Honorable judges, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Half an hour ago, I received a piece of passage. It is entitled, "Don't Fear Artificial Intelligence." In my eyes, I think this passage is a combination of exposition and argumentation. Based on this passage, I know the author told us in the very beginning, he uses two examples, two famous people. One is Stephen Hawking, the other is Elon Musk, to tell us that AI, artificial intelligence, really threatens human beings. And then he mentioned that, further, say technology is a double-edged sword. And even some futurists, they fight against AI, we say artificial intelligence. But still, there are some people, they hold very contradictory views about it. And then in the second part, the author mentioned some methods, how can we cope with it? Exactly the four. Later, I'm going to tell you. And coming to the end, the author summarizes. He tells us that artificial intelligence, or we say technology, it has more advantages, so we'd better make use of it. And based on this passage, I've designed my lesson plan. Basically, the integrated language teaching approach will be employed in my teaching. And the time for my teaching will last for about 3.5 class periods. And my students, they are non-English major sophomores. Here come my teaching objectives. Number one is to understand the story, exactly the passage. And number two is about getting rid of language difficulties. And the third is kind of writing technique. Now I'm going to lead you to go through my teaching procedures. To begin with, I will lead my students to do the leading part. Concerning this passage, I will give a very short video clip about maybe the artificial intelligence nowadays they challenge our human being. And after viewing this video clip, I will ask my students two questions. Number one, do you believe it? And number two, what can we do? So they will have maybe 3 or 5 minute discussion with their classmates. And later, I will invite some students to report the answers back to the whole class. And as teacher, I will give some brief comments. And then I think my students, they will be very, very much motivated or will be interested in what they're going to read. And after doing this, I will give my students assignment. They're going to pre-read the whole article to get the main idea for different parts. So this is the assignment. They're going to do it in their dormitory. So next time when they come into my class, I'm going to check, to do the pre-reading checking. But this time, I will not check the answers, just to see whether they have done the preparation. And then move on to my third step. I will lead my students to explore the whole passage. This time, in the beginning, I will ask some content-based questions. When answering content questions, I think my students normally will have difficulties. But why? Why they cannot solve these problems? Because they cannot answer my questions. It can boil down to, we see the difficulties in terms of words, expressions, sentence patterns, or we say translation or coherence, cohesion, and the like. So as the teacher, I will help my students to solve these problems. For example, if I take one sentence, for example, let's come to paragraph 5. That's on the first page, the last paragraph. Line 3 from the bottom. Let's see. The resulting guidelines, which have been revised by the industry since then, had worked very well. There has been no significant problems, accidental or international, for the past 39 years. So this sentence is quite long. We can see in one part, there is one more part embedded in it. I think my students, they may ask, why we use accidental or international, and before it and after it, we use the comma here. Exactly, it is kind of inserted element, we say parenthesis. So in this way, my students can understand the sentence better. And after getting rid of all these language difficulties, I think my students can answer my questions. Still, sometimes I will design some mini lectures to ask my students to watch it also in their dormitory, because we don't have enough time in the classroom to get rid of all the difficulties. Usually we only have maybe two or 4 class periods in a week. Anyway, I will give them these video clips, or we say mini lectures. Then, when they come back to my class, I will ask them to do it in the form of flipped classroom teaching method. They will have lots of exercise. Maybe it will role play, or we say kind of talking between the students, also the students and me. Well, after doing this, of course, my students have a much better understanding of the whole passage. So at this moment, I will lead my students get back to the second part, pre-reading checking. Since they have a much better understanding, they can have different answers. They may do some changes for their answers. And this time, I'm going to check. And according to my understanding, this passage can be divided into 3 parts. From paragraph 1, of course, skipping the very short sentence, one sentence paragraph in the beginning, the long paragraph from paragraph 1 to paragraph 4, this is the first part. The author mentioned the AI challenges people, threatens people. And starting from paragraph 5 until paragraph 8, this is second part. The author poses the 4 ways how can we coping with AI. And the last paragraph constitutes the last part. The author tells us, although it has some challenges, but it still has more advantages, so we need to make use of it. And through the main ideas, we can get the theme. When facing the challenges, here mentioned AI technology, we'd better hold a positive attitude. We still can think of other ways to solve the problem we are facing now. Well, until this moment, exactly, we have done the exploration of the whole passage. And I will still ask my students to do my part 5, that's writing technique. Apparently, in this passage, the author used lots of examples to support his idea. So, I will ask my students to find out what kind of writing technique the author employs in this passage. I think they can find it easily. And then I will ask my students for examples, what kind of defining features it has. And also, I will tell them for examples, why examples are preferred in persuading others. At this moment, usually my students will also have discussion with their classmates, the members. They may know we say examples are more convincing. We say facts can talk. And based on this, they are going to do the assignments. Also, I hope my students will write an essay on this topic. Smart cars can really make drivers jobless. They need to use this writing technique we have learned from this passage. That's exemplification, or say examples. Well, up to now, I have finished sharing my presentation. And thank you very much.
Thank you, contestant number 7. Now let's hear from the judge for your questions.
Hello.
Hi.
Would you please look at the bottom of the first page?
The first bit of the board.
The very sentence you mentioned.
Yeah.
The resulting guidelines. Would you please read the sentence again?
The resulting guidelines, which have been revised by the industrial since then, have worked very well. There have been no significant problems, accidental or international, for the past 39 years.
How would you explain this accidental and, as you read it,
Accidental.
international?
Intentional. Accidental means by chance, very occasionally, not on
How
purpose.
about international?
No, intentional means on purpose.
So that's intentional, not international.
Oh, that sounds, I'm sorry, really, I'm sorry.
Okay. Also, please look at the second paragraph.
The second paragraph, okay.
The second sentence.
The second sentence.
Humanity was introduced to what?
existential risk.
Would you please read the whole sentence?
Humanity was introduced to existential risk when I was a child sitting under my desk during the civil defense drills of the 1950s.
Okay. Why was the child sitting under the desk?
Here mentioned the year 1950s. I don't know exactly the background, but I think at that time it mentioned
They
civil
did
rights.
not have chairs, right?
I'm not sure, but here, civil defense drills is kind of a military thing. So when something of that kind happened, I think for children, they were scared of it. So they better get under the desk, I think.
Also in the cases of earthquakes, right?
Earthquake, yes, of course.
How to understand this? Humanity was introduced to existential risk.
Humanity was introduced to existential risk. Should I explain it in Chinese or English?
Both.
Both.
Or either.
Okay. Either. Maybe humanity, 人类接触到这种业已存在的风险。人 humanity, I think in that way is understandable.
Okay, I don't think I have any other questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you all.